The transport shuttle shuddered as we broke through the upper atmosphere of what the humans called New Hope. I gripped the safety restraints, my three-fingered hands pressing deep into the synthetic fabric. The pilot, a human with graying temples and eyes that had seen too much, didn't even flinch as the hull groaned around us. "First time on a human colony?" he asked, not looking back at me. "First time anywhere near humans," I admitted. My translator buzzed, converting my native clicks and whistles into standard galactic. He laughed short, bitter. "Well, welcome to the neighborhood, alien. Try not to stare at the locals. They get twitchy." I didn't understand what he meant by that. Not then. The landing pad stretched out before us as the shuttle settled onto its struts. New Hope wasn't what I expected. The propaganda vids back on my homeworld, Vexus Prime, showed human settlements as chaotic jungles of metal and fire with savage creatures howling at the stars. But this place, it was orderly, almost beautiful. White buildings curved against a pale blue sky. Trees lined the main thoroughfare, real trees, not the synthetic ones we used on Vexus. The air, when the hatch finally opened, smelled of something green and alive. "This way, Zil," the pilot said, gesturing toward the terminal. "The council representative will meet you there." I gathered my belongings, a small case containing my personal effects and the diplomatic credentials that had taken 3 cycles to obtain. My species, the Vexi, had been neutral observers in the galactic community for generations. We studied. We recorded. We never interfered. That's why the council sent me. Someone who could watch the humans without judgment. Someone who could understand them. The terminal buzzed with activity. Humans moved in every direction, their 2-legged gait seeming both clumsy and purposeful. They spoke in sharp bursts of sound, their language harsh compared to the melodic tones of my people. Some wore uniforms, dark blue with silver insignia. Others wore civilian clothes in every color imaginable. And everywhere there were eyes. They watched me, not with hostility exactly, more like curiosity, the same way a predator watches a potential meal trying to decide if it's worth the effort. Ambassador Zil. A female human approached, tall, with dark skin and hair cropped close to her skull. Her uniform bore the markings of the Human Defense Corps. "That's me," I said, extending my upper appendage in the human greeting gesture I'd studied in preparation. She took it, her grip was firm, almost crushing. "I'm Commander Reyes. Welcome to New Hope. The Council has assigned me as your escort during your stay." "Thank you, Commander. I'm honored by your hospitality." Her expression didn't change. "Let's not get ahead of ourselves. You're here to observe. Fine, observe, but stay out of the way. We've got a situation developing and I don't have time to babysit." She turned and walked away without waiting for my response. I hurried to follow, my feet clicking against the polished floor in a rhythm that felt out of sync with the world around me. The situation she mentioned became apparent as we exited the terminal. Fortifications everywhere. Humans in combat gear manned checkpoints. Heavy weapons emplacements dotted the perimeter, and in the distance I could see the faint shimmer of a planetary shield generator. "What's happening?" I asked. Reyes didn't slow down. "The Jorvan Collective sent a fleet. They're demanding we surrender our resources. Standard colonial dispute." I wasn't informed of any conflict. The Council's intelligence suggested New Hope was a peaceful settlement. "Yeah, well, the Council's intelligence is crap." She finally stopped, turning to face me. "The Jorvans have been pushing into human space for the last 6 months. We've lost 3 colonies. New Hope is the last one in this sector. My people have had dealings with the Jorvans. They're reasonable. Perhaps I could." "Reasonable?" Reyes laughed, but there was no humor in it. "They killed 300,000 humans on Centaurus Prime. Men, women, children. They didn't even try to negotiate. Just came in, took what they wanted, and left the planet burning." I had no response to that. The Vexi had records of the Jorvan collective, of course. They were aggressive, expansionist, but not genocidal, at least not according to our intel. Maybe the intel was wrong. Reyes started walking again, and I followed her through the maze of fortifications. The humans worked with a frantic energy that seemed almost desperate. They moved equipment, reinforced positions, ran drills, and all of them, every single one, had weapons. Not stunners, not disruptors, kinetic weapons, projectile launchers that used chemical reactions to propel small pieces of metal at lethal velocities. Brutal, primitive, effective. "We've got a transport heading to the forward observation post," Reyes said. "You'll be stationed there. It's far enough from the front lines that you'll be safe, but close enough to see what's happening." "I appreciate the consideration." She gave me a look I couldn't quite interpret. "Don't thank me yet, Zill. You haven't seen anything yet." The forward observation post was a squat structure built into the side of a hill. From its position, I could see the entire valley below, a green expanse dotted with human settlements. And beyond that, the dark shapes of Jorvan warships hanging in the sky like a promise of violence. The humans assigned to the post were a mixed group. Soldiers mostly, but also civilians who'd refused to evacuate. Farmers, engineers, a few children who stared at me with wide eyes before their parents pulled them away. "Don't mind them," said a soldier who introduced himself as Private Tors. He was young, maybe 20 in human years, with a face that still had traces of youthful softness. "They haven't seen many off-worlders before." "Your people seem resilient," I said carefully. "Resilient," he laughed. "That's one word for it. My grandmother used to say we're too stubborn to die. That's probably more accurate." I spent the next few days observing. The humans went about their routines with a methodical precision that seemed almost paradoxical given the chaos of their preparations. They farmed. They repaired their equipment. They played with their children. And all the while, the Jorvan ships hung in the sky, waiting. On the fourth day, they sent a message. I was in the communications room when it came through, studying the humans' primitive but effective data systems. The screen flickered, and the face of a Jorvan commander appeared, scaled, reptilian features, eyes that held no warmth. "Surrender," the Jorvan said in heavily accented Standard. "You have 12 standard hours to evacuate your civilian population. After that, we will begin orbital bombardment. This is not a negotiation." The message ended, and the room fell silent. Commander Reyes was the first to speak. "Get the civilians to the shelters, activate the shield generators, and someone get me a direct line to Fleet Command." "Commander," one of her officers said, "the shield won't hold against a sustained bombardment. We need—" "I know what we need." Her voice was calm, controlled. "We need time. 12 hours is enough to get the civilians underground. After that, we dig in and make them pay for every inch of ground they want." "Commander, you can't be serious. Against the entire Jorvan fleet. We have maybe 2,000 combat-effective personnel on this planet. They have 50,000 troops in their invasion force." Reyes turned to face the officer. Her expression was almost serene. "Then we make each of our soldiers count for 20 of theirs. Now get moving. We've got work to do." The humans scattered, and I was left alone with Reyes. "Commander," I said, "I could try to contact the Jorvans. My people have diplomatic channels that might—" "No," she cut me off. "We don't negotiate with people who shoot first." "But the civilians, the children, if I could just—" I said no. Her voice was sharp now. "You're here to observe, Ambassador, so observe, but stay out of our way." She left, and I stood in the empty room, watching the Jorvan ships on the display. 12 hours, that's all they had. The shelters were underground caverns, carved out of the planetary bedrock. I watched as the humans filed in, mothers carrying children, old men leaning on canes, families clutching photographs and other mementos of their lives above. A young girl stopped in front of me. She couldn't have been more than 8 human years old. Her hair was a tangled mess of red curls, and her eyes were the color of the sky above. "Are you an alien?" she asked. "Yes, I am." "Are you going to help us?" I didn't know how to answer that. The truth was I couldn't help them. I had no weapons, no authority, no power to affect the outcome of what was coming. "I will observe," I said finally, "and I will remember." She tilted her head, considering this. "That's what my teacher says. She says remembering is important. That's how we learn." "What is your name?" "Lily," she smiled, revealing a gap where one of her teeth was missing. "Are you scared, alien?" I thought about the Jorvan ships, the pending bombardment, the certainty of death that hung over all of them. "Yes," I admitted, "I am." "Don't be." She reached out and touched my appendage with her small hand. "My daddy says fear is just a feeling. It doesn't mean you can't be brave." Her mother called her, and she ran off before I could respond. Fear is just a feeling. I would remember those words. The bombardment started at dawn. I watched from the observation post as streaks of light descended from the Jorvan ships, energy weapons, kinetic projectiles, everything they had. The shield generator flickered, held, then shattered under the assault. Explosions bloomed across the valley, turning farms into craters and homes into ash. And then the dropships came. They descended through the smoke, dozens of them, carrying the Jorvan infantry. The humans met them at the perimeter, their kinetic weapons chattering in a rhythm that seemed almost musical. I'd never witnessed combat before, not like this, not real combat with real death. The Jorvans were formidable. Their armor was thick, their weapons powerful. They advanced in perfect formations, sweeping aside the human defenses like they were made of paper. But the humans didn't break. They fell back, regrouped, and attacked again. They used terrain, trickery, everything at their disposal. I watched a single human soldier hold a position against 10 Jorvans, buying time for his comrades to retreat. He didn't survive, but his sacrifice wasn't meaningless. In the end, the humans were pushed back to the final defensive line, the ridge just above the underground shelters. The Jorvans paused, regrouping for the final assault. Reyes found me in the observation post. Her uniform was torn, her face streaked with grime and something that might have been blood. "They're going to break through," she said. "We've got maybe an hour before they overrun the shelters." "What are you going to do?" She smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. "We're going to make sure they don't find the shelters." "How they outnumber you, they outgun you." She looked at me for a long moment. "Ambassador, we've been fighting since the day we first crawled out of the primordial slime. We've fought each other, we've fought the environment, we've fought everything the universe has thrown at us. And we've survived." "I don't understand." "No, you don't," she turned away, "but you will." The human defenders made their stand on the ridge. I watched from my position, unable to look away. They fought with a ferocity that seemed almost suicidal. They used their kinetic weapons, but also blades, fists, even rocks. They threw themselves at the Jorvans with a desperation that bordered on madness. And they won. Not by outgunning the Jorvans, not by outsmarting them. They won by making the cost of victory too high to bear. When the last Jorvan soldier fell, the valley fell silent. The human defenders were few, perhaps 300 from the original 2,000. But they stood on the ridge, battered and bloody, and they had won. Reyes found me again as the sun was setting. "Did you see?" she asked. "I saw." "Do you understand now?" I didn't, not really, but I nodded anyway. "I think I'm beginning to." She laughed, and this time there was genuine warmth in it. "You don't understand anything, Ambassador, but that's okay. We'll show you." The Jorvans retreated. Their fleet pulled back and New Hope was safe, at least for now. But the price was staggering. Of the 2,000 humans who had fought in the defense, only 300 remained. The rest were dead, buried in shallow graves on the ridge where they'd made their stand. I attended the memorial service. It was a human custom, I'd learned, to honor the dead by remembering them. The survivors gathered around a simple monument, a stone pillar carved with the names of the fallen. Ray spoke first. Her words were simple, unadorned. They gave everything, she said. Not for glory, not for conquest, for each other, for the children in the shelters, for the future they believed in. The crowd murmured their agreement, and I found myself moved in ways I hadn't expected. Lily found me after the service. She'd survived like so many others. "My daddy's name is on the stone," she said. "He was brave, wasn't he?" "He was," I said. "He was very brave." She nodded solemnly. "I'm going to be brave too. When I grow up, I'm going to protect people just like him." I didn't know what to say to that, so I just nodded. Part 2, the understanding. The weeks after the Jorvan attack were strange. The humans threw themselves into rebuilding with a manic energy that seemed to defy their recent losses. Farms were replanted, homes reconstructed. The dead mourned, but life continued. I found myself drawn into their community in ways I hadn't anticipated. The children, in particular, seemed fascinated by me. They would gather around, asking questions about my homeworld, my people, the stars I'd traveled through. "Did you ever meet a real Jorvan?" a boy asked one afternoon. His name was Milo, and he was around 9 human years old. "I have," I said. "They are not all soldiers, you know. There are Jorvan merchants, artists, scientists. They are a complex species." "But they tried to kill us," Milo said. "That's not complex, that's evil." I considered this. Evil is a human concept. For the Jorvans, they were simply expanding their territory. It wasn't personal. "Tell that to my parents." Milo's voice was flat. "They died in the bombing." I had no response to that, and I realized, perhaps for the first time, the distance between observation and understanding. A few days later, Commander Reyes requested my presence at her headquarters. The building was a temporary structure, erected after the original had been destroyed in the attack. Inside, maps and displays covered every surface. "We have a problem," she said without preamble. "The Jorvan fleet is regrouping. They're going to hit us again." I understood they were driven back. "Temporarily," she gestured to a display showing the sector. "They'll be back within 2 weeks, and next time they'll bring more ships, more troops. You can't defend against that, not with your current strength." "No, we can't." She looked at me, and there was something in her eyes I couldn't quite identify. "That's why we're going to take the fight to them." "Commander, that's insane. Your forces are decimated. You can't possibly." "We're not going to fight them in space." She cut me off. "We're going to hit their supply lines, their logistics bases, make it impossible for them to sustain a campaign." "How?" She smiled. "That's where you come in, Ambassador. You're going to help us." I recoiled. "I can't. My role is neutral. I'm here to observe, not participate." "Things change, Zil. The galaxy's changing, and you have to decide which side you're on." "I don't have a side. My people have been neutral for generations. We don't." "Your people are dead." The words hung in the air between us. "Didn't you know? The Jorvan fleet that attacked us. They passed through Vexy space on the way here." I stared at her. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying they glassed 3 of your colony worlds. The Vexy homeworld is under occupation. Your government surrendered after losing 500 million people." The world tilted around me. My homeworld, my people. No, it couldn't be. "This is a deception," I said. "You're trying to manipulate me." "Watch the feed." She gestured to a display. "It's all there. The council confirmed it 3 days ago. We didn't want to tell you until after the defense, but—" She trailed off, and I watched the display. Images of burning cities, fleeing refugees, the flag of my people burning in the ashes of our greatest city. My homeworld was gone. How did this happen? I asked. My voice was barely a whisper. The Jorvans wanted a staging ground for their campaign against us. Your people were in the way. They offered surrender, but the Jorvans weren't interested in prisoners. They wanted territory. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Everything I'd known, everything I'd believed in, crumbled around me. The Council, Reyes said, has authorized a counterattack. We're going to hit the Jorvans where it hurts, and we want you to help us. How? The word came out like a broken thing. I'm a diplomat, a scholar. I don't know anything about warfare. You know the Jorvans, she said. Their language, their customs, their weaknesses. You've studied them your entire life. You want me to betray them. To betray the people who killed your species. She raised an eyebrow. I'd call that justice. I was silent for a long moment. The weight of what she was asking pressed down on me, heavier than anything I'd ever experienced. My people believed in neutrality, I said finally. We believed in observation, not intervention. We believed that understanding the universe was more important than changing it. And look what that got you, Reyes said. Look what it got your people. She was right. I hated her for it, but she was right. Show me the plan, I said. The briefing room was filled with human officers, their faces grim. They made room for me at the table, and I saw respect in their eyes, something I hadn't seen before. Ambassador Zill has agreed to assist us, Reyes said. His knowledge of the Jorvan supply networks will be invaluable. I spoke then, telling them everything I knew about Jorvan logistics, their communication protocols, their patterns of deployment. It was strange, hearing my own voice speaking the words that would doom them. But I pushed past the guilt, past the revulsion, past everything. Because my people were dead, and the Jorvans had killed them. The operation was simple in concept. Hit the supply depot on Jorvan Station 3. Destroy the stockpiles, cut off the Jorvans' ability to resupply their fleet, force them to retreat. Who's going to lead the assault? I asked. I am, Reyes said. I'll be in the first wave. That's suicide. Probably, she shrugged, but someone's got to do it. I'll go with you. The room fell silent. Reyes stared at me. You're a civilian, a diplomat, you wouldn't survive. I've survived this long. I met her eyes, and I need to see this through for my people. She nodded slowly. All right, but you stay behind me, no heroics. Agreed. The attack came at dawn, just as the Jorvans had attacked us. I found myself strapped into a human dropship, surrounded by soldiers who radiated a nervous energy I could feel in my scales. You sure about this, Ambassador? Private Torres was beside me, his face pale but determined. No, I admitted, but I'm not going back. He laughed. That's the spirit, just stick with me, I'll keep you alive. You barely survived the last battle. Yeah, but I learned a lot, like how to duck. He grinned, and despite everything, I found myself smiling back. The dropship shuddered as we broke through the Jorvan defenses. Explosions rocked the hull, and I heard the screaming of wounded soldiers over the comms. 10 seconds, the pilot shouted. Brace, brace, brace. The impact slammed me against my restraints, and then we were out, spilling into the corridor of the Jorvan station. The battle that followed was chaos. The humans fought like demons, their kinetic weapons tearing through the Jorvan defenders. I stayed close to Torres, using my knowledge of the station's layout to guide us toward the main supply depot. They're reinforcing, Reyes shouted over the comm. We need to move faster. I led the way through a maintenance tunnel, emerging in the depot itself. The sight before me was breathtaking, aisles upon aisles of supplies, enough to support a fleet for months. Plant the charges, Reyes ordered. We've got 5 minutes before the Jorvan seal the bulkheads. I helped the soldiers position the explosives, working with a frantic energy that blocked out the fear. Everything was going to plan. And then the Jorvans attacked. They came through the main entrance, a tide of armored soldiers that seemed endless. The humans set up a defensive perimeter, their weapons chattering as they tried to hold the line. "We need more time," Tors shouted. "Get those charges planted," Reyes screamed back. "Everyone else hold the line." I was planting the last charge when I saw it, a Jorvan soldier breaking through the human line, heading straight for Reyes. She was occupied with another target, unaware of the threat. I didn't think, I just moved. My body slammed into the Jorvan's side, knocking him off course. He turned, his weapon coming up, and I felt the impact of his projectile as it punched through my lower torso. "Zil," I heard Reyes scream. "Zil." Then the world went white, and I knew nothing more. I woke in a human medical facility, my body covered in bandages. The pain was immense, but I was alive. Reyes sat beside my bed, her face haggard. "You're an idiot," she said. "A complete, utter idiot." "Did we succeed?" "The station's destroyed. The Jorvans are in retreat. We bought ourselves time." "Good," I closed my eyes. "That's good." Reyes was silent for a moment, then she spoke again. "You saved my life, Ambassador. I won't forget that." "I wasn't thinking about saving you," I admitted. "I was just tired of watching people die." She nodded slowly. "Yeah, I understand that." The next few weeks were a blur of recovery. The humans treated me like one of their own, and I found myself growing accustomed to their ways, their humor, their resilience, their capacity for both violence and compassion. And I began to understand why the galaxy feared them. Part 3: The Transformation. Time passed. The war with the Jorvans continued, but the supply strike had bought the humans precious months to reinforce their position. New Hope became a fortress, bristling with weapons and defenses that made it nearly impenetrable. I stayed on the planet, working with the humans as a military advisor. It was a strange role for a Vexi diplomat, but I found purpose in it. My people were gone. The old rules no longer applied. "You've changed, Zil," Reyes said one evening. We were sitting on the observation deck, watching the stars wheel overhead. "When you first arrived, you were so detached, like you were watching everything through a window." Observation is the Vexi way. We never engage. We never participate. Except now. Except now. I paused, considering my next words. My people believed that understanding the universe was the highest calling. We thought that by observing, we could transcend our base instincts, become something more than mere participants in the cosmic drama. Did it work? No, it made us irrelevant. I laughed, a harsh sound. We spent generations watching the universe go by, and when the Jorvans came, we had nothing to defend ourselves with. No weapons, no defenses, no will to fight, and now we're extinct. "Not extinct," Reyes said. "You're still here. One Vexi, in a universe of billions. I'm a relic, not a species." She looked at me, and there was something in her eyes I couldn't quite identify. "So what are you now, Zil? If you're not a Vexi observer anymore, what are you?" I thought about this for a long moment. "I don't know, I'm still figuring that out." "You're one of us," she said. "That's what you are." I stared at her. "I'm not human. I can never be human." "No, but you've chosen to stand with us, to fight with us, to bleed with us. That makes you family," she smiled. "Welcome to the species, Zil. It's a messy, chaotic, beautiful mess, but it's ours." I didn't know what to say to that, so I just nodded. The Jorvans launched another attack, but this time they were repulsed. The humans had learned from their previous losses, adapting their tactics to counter the Jorvan strategies. They used guerrilla warfare, ambushes, feints, and deceptions that confused and demoralized the enemy. "We've got them on the run," Reyes said during a briefing. "But they're going to hit us with everything they've got before they retreat. We need to be ready." "How do you know?" I asked. "How do you know what they're going to do?" "Because I've studied their tactics, their patterns, their psychology," She looked at me, just like you taught me. I felt a surge of pride, followed by a wave of guilt. I was using the knowledge of my people to help destroy another species. Was that right? Was it just? Ambassador, Torres was beside me. You okay? I'm fine, I said, just thinking. That's dangerous, thinking, he grinned. Better to just act, that's what I always say. Does that work? Sometimes, when it doesn't, I run. Running works too. I laughed, despite everything. The humans had a gift for finding humor in the darkest moments. It was one of the things I'd come to admire about them. The final battle came on a gray dawn, the sky thick with Jorvan ships. The humans had prepared, but the odds were against them. The shield will hold for about an hour, Reyes said. After that, we're on our own. An hour? I looked at the fleet hanging in the sky. That's not much time. It's enough, it has to be. I followed her to the command center, where the humans were coordinating their defenses. The displays showed the Jorvan fleet deploying their landing craft, thousands of soldiers descending toward the planet. Ground troops are our best bet, Reyes said. They're expecting us to focus on the orbital battle. We'll hit them in the atmosphere before they can establish a beachhead. That's insane. You'll be outnumbered 10-1. Better than 20-1 in the ground. She smiled grimly. Trust me, Zil, we know what we're doing. The battle was a nightmare. I watched from the command center as the human fighters engaged the Jorvan dropships, their kinetic weapons tearing through the enemy craft. Explosions bloomed in the sky like terrible flowers, and debris rained down on the planet below. They're breaking through, an officer said. We've got too many ships. They're punching through the fighter screen. We need to scramble the reserve, Reyes said. Every ship we've got. Commander, that will leave the planet undefended. If even one Jorvan ship breaks through. We're dead anyway if we can't stop this assault. She looked at me. Zil, I need you on the ground. Coordinate with the ground troops. If they establish a beachhead, we need to be ready. I nodded and left the command center, my heart pounding. This was it. The moment everything changed. Part 4, The Grinding Truth. The ground battle was like nothing I had ever experienced. The humans fought with a ferocity that bordered on madness, using every weapon at their disposal, kinetic, explosive, and even hand-to-hand combat. They threw themselves at the Jorvan positions with a desperate courage that seemed to horrify the enemy. They're insane, I heard a Jorvan soldier say over the comms, his voice shaking. They're charging us with knives. What kind of species does that? The kind that survives, I thought. The kind that refuses to die. I fought alongside the humans, using the weapons they'd given me. My aim was poor, my instincts untrained, but I fought anyway, because this was my fight now. These were my people. Torres found me in the chaos. Ambassador, we need to fall back. They've got us surrounded. Where's Commander Reyes? She's leading the counterattack on the eastern flank. We need to regroup. I followed him through the wreckage, stepping over bodies, human and Jorvan alike. The stench of death was overwhelming, a thick miasma that seemed to cling to everything. Here, Torres pointed to a fortified position. We can hold them there. We reached the position, joining the handful of survivors. The Jorvans were advancing, their disciplined formations sweeping everything before them. We can't hold, a soldier said. There's too many of them. Then we make them pay for every inch, I said. That's what humans do. That's what we do now. The soldiers looked at me and I saw something in their eyes, respect maybe, or just desperation. It didn't matter. We fought. I don't remember much of the battle, only fragments. A Jorvan soldier lunging at me, my weapon firing, the body falling, another Jorvan, another, and another. And then Reyes was there, her uniform torn, her face streaked with blood. Zil, we've got them on the run. The fleet's in retreat. I looked at her and then at the chaos around me. Bodies everywhere. Human, Jorvan, so many dead. We won, I said. We actually won. We always win, she said. It just costs us. The aftermath of the battle was a blur of exhaustion and grief. Thousands of humans had died, but the Jorvans had been broken. Their fleet was in full retreat, their ground forces decimated. New Hope was safe. But the cost was staggering. I walked through the makeshift medical facility, seeing the wounded and dying. Humans in every state of injury, some beyond hope, and yet they still found the strength to joke, to comfort each other, to sing. "Why do you sing?" I asked one of the soldiers, a young woman with a bandaged arm. "You're injured. You're in pain. Why aren't you screaming?" She looked at me surprised. "Why would I scream? Screaming doesn't help anything. Singing helps. Singing makes us feel better." I didn't understand, but I was starting to. Part 5: The Revelation. The Jorvans never returned. The supply strike had crippled their logistics, and the ground battle had broken their will. They retreated to their own space, licking their wounds, and the humans were left to rebuild. I stayed on New Hope for another year, helping in whatever way I could. I taught the humans about galactic politics, about the species they'd encounter, about the dangers and opportunities that awaited them. And I learned from them. I learned about their history, the wars they'd fought among themselves, the genocides they'd committed, the horrors they'd perpetrated on their own species. I also learned about their capacity for kindness, their ability to love, their fierce, unwavering protectiveness of their children. "You know," Reyes said one evening, "you're not the first alien to study us. The galaxy's been watching us for centuries." "I know," I said. "My people had records." "Then you know what they think of us." "Yes, they think you're dangerous, unpredictable, violent." She nodded slowly. "They're not wrong." "No, they're not." I paused. "But they're not right either. They see your violence, but they don't see what drives it. They don't understand that you fight not because you love destruction, but because you love each other." Reyes was silent for a long moment. That's the most beautiful thing anyone's ever said about us." "It's the truth. I've seen it. I've lived it. And I understand now why the galaxy fears you." I smiled. "Because you won't stop. You can't stop. You'll fight to the very end, and you'll take your enemies with you." "Damn right we will," she grinned. "That's what we do." Part 6: The Final Understanding. I left New Hope a few months later, called back to the Galactic Council to give a report on the human conflict. The council chambers were filled with representatives from dozens of species, all waiting to hear what I had to say. "Ambassador Zill," the council president said, "you have been with the humans for over 2 years. You've seen them fight. You've seen them negotiate. Tell us, what are we dealing with?" I stood at the podium looking out at the assembled leaders. My people were gone, but I'd found a new family, a new purpose. "The humans," I said, "are the most dangerous species in the galaxy, and also the most noble. They fight with a ferocity that is unmatched, but they fight for each other, for their children, for their future. They will sacrifice anything for those they love, and they will not stop until they've won." The council president leaned forward. "That sounds like a warning." "It is, and it's also a promise." I smiled, and I felt the humans' confidence flowing through me. "If you fight them, you will lose. If you threaten their children, you will be destroyed. But if you offer them friendship, you will find allies like no other. And you speak for them now, you Avexi." I laughed. "I speak as a human because that's what I've become. That's what they've made me." The council was silent, processing my words, and I knew that the galaxy would never be the same. After my report, I returned to New Hope, to my home, to my people. Reyes met me at the landing pad, her face breaking into a smile when she saw me. "Welcome back, Ambassador." "Commander," I bowed my head. "It's good to be home." She clapped me on the back. "Good to have you home. We've got work to do." "Work?" "Always, that's what humans do. We work, we fight, we survive," she grinned, "and we win." I laughed and it felt good. "Yes, yes, you do." And I walked with her back into the settlement, back into the chaos and noise and life that I'd come to love. Because I understood now. The galaxy feared humans because they were unbreakable, because they loved fiercely and fought harder, because they refused to surrender. And I was one of them,